And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I hope you're all doing well. I'm very happy to have you back here again for another interview with a member of the European Parliament. Tonight, we will discuss with MEP Francisco Guerreiro from the Greens groups on the left side of EU politics. So he's 38. It was actually his birthday yesterday, so to wish him a birthday in chat. And he is an MEP, a Portuguese MEP since 2019, so that's his first mandate. He's a member of the Committee on Budget, the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Policies, the Committee on Fisheries, and is a substitute in the Committee on the Internal Market and Consumer Protection. And within this committee, to give you a bit of an idea, he works mostly on animal welfare, plant-based alternative to meat and fish consumption, protection of the ocean, biodiversity protection, the circular economy, climate change, this kind of thing. But before we start our conversation, as usual, I remind the house rules for anyone among you who will be new with us tonight. So our guest will stay with us for about an hour. After that, he will go and either enjoy the evening in Strasbourg or keep working if he's unlucky, while you'll be stuck with me for another half an hour to discuss about what you thought of the interview, do a bit of a debrief, answer questions that you may have that we couldn't cover, these kind of things. As usual, I've prepared my own question for Mr. Guerreiro, and I have collected questions from people on Reddit and Discord. You can, of course, ask your question in the chat and react. That's there for that. I will keep an eye on it and pick among your suggestions. So feel free to participate and react, but as usual, don't spam and stay civil. So these interviews are there for you to better understand who your MEPs are, what they stand for, what are their priorities, and also know more about their opinion about the EU and general EU political questions. Which brings me to my final point: we will not talk about national politics unless it's related to EU politics. So keep that in mind when asking your questions. And on this note, well, let's dive into this. Good evening, Francisco Guerreiro. Welcome on the channel. Thank you for taking the time to answer our questions tonight, especially in the plenary week. It's always very busy out there. Again, happy birthday. It was your birthday yesterday.
Yeah.
So you listened to me do my little introduction. Is there anything I missed that you would like to add regarding what you do in Parliament?
Yes, I think it's important to say that I'm a father of two beautiful daughters. And so obviously that's a very important issue for me. And that's one of my biggest causes here in the European Parliament is also the debates surrounding the universal basic income. And so I made a documentary focusing on this issue. It has 12 episodes. It can be checked online on rbdoc.com. So it would be ubi.doc.com. And so it has the translation in English, so anyone can see. It has 12 episodes, really good. That's talk about employment, talk about the misconceptions of the universal basic income concept. It talks about rural development, talks about how could we finance it, and so it's also a very important issue that I talk about here in Parliament.
Okay, that's interesting. I will definitely ask you about it a bit later. But first, let's start with you. How and why did you go into politics in the first place and then later became an MP? What was the spark for you?
Well, for me, it was the urge to build up on the movement that was rethinking politics in Portugal and afterwards in Europe. So I entered a political party that was really, really small, that did have any national representation, that it was an animalist party, and then it grew to an ecologist party. And so I was in the beginning with them. I was 7 years the leading head of communication department. So I helped grow the party to become a huge, I would say, a huge marketing tool on the social media. So we made a lot of differences. And then we entered the National Parliament in 2015. And then it was natural. I was elected by my colleagues to be the candidates to the European elections. And we won with a huge votes regarding that. Rarely an ecological party has a representation from Portugal because we only elect 21 MEPs, and we had 5%, so we had a huge victory. And I came here to defend the program, and one of that was the universal basic income.
Well, actually, let's start with that since we're right into this. So, In which context are you talking about the universal income? I mean, in which committee? How do you campaign for it in the EU?
Well, it's difficult because the treaties don't allow us to implement such measure. But I've been able to talk in the parliament regarding these issues. When we talk about minimum income, that is different from universal basic income, and they don't collide; they can be complementary. I talk about when you talk about a new approach of the economic and social system. I talked about also when we were talking about the incentives to several sectors when we were hit by the pandemic. So this was a huge debate also in Portugal. How can we help several sectors of society that are being hit by the pandemic? And I make questions to the Commission. And as much as I can, I try to bring about this issue. And so obviously at the technical level, it's very difficult. I also tried in budgets, tried to make a pilot project, but it's not feasible. So the structure doesn't allow us to have a pilot project that is universally gives money to a sample of citizens in the European Union to then try to assess what are the positive effects, negative effects of this income on these citizens. Because it would have to be structures. It had to be to, I don't know, farmers that are unemployed, that are in the rural areas. It cannot be to an amount of citizens that some are employed, some are unemployed, some are women, some are men, some are old, some are young. And so that's the difficulty of technically trying to make the pilot project. But we tried anyway, but we couldn't. And so the main priority now is to try to share the debate, to try to tackle the misconceptions of the concept, and obviously trying to show that we have a different path that we can take as a European Union if we want to surpass several problems, even connected to populism. And so for me, if we look at the technological curve and exponential development of artificial intelligence, automatization, robotization, for me, it will be inevitable that we will have to apply some type of basic income in our societies. I just wish that we have the proper debate so we don't destroy the social state, but reinforce it. So this is a reinforcement to the social state, not the opposite.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. I think, if I remember well, there's a few countries that try to have experiments at national level, like at local level, to try to try a bit the universal income. Is that true, or am I mistaken?
No, there were some countries here in Europe that tried. The most known, I would say, that is Finland, but it was interrupted because the government didn't like the project as it was, and then it stopped the funding. But even though it had some curious outcomes, because the citizens that received this income had higher levels of stability, emotional problems decreased, their psychological problems also decreased. And we are only talking about people that were unemployed. So even in the conception of the amounts of citizens, the sample,
the test subject, yeah.
The test subject, it was only specific to unemployed people. And so it kind of misses the point of making it unconditional and for us to understand the impacts through several citizens, some that are employed, some that have higher or lower income. And so it misses the point. But the general pilot projects that are being made all over the world show very promising results and show that we can rethink our way of distribution wealth. And this is also not only a distribution of wealth, but it's a distribution of power. And so it empowers citizens to make their own decisions. And in the end, it helps society grow in a different way. And I think it's very interesting to see the results that are coming from this pilot project.
And you talked about like trying to fight the misconceptions. What are the common misconceptions that you hear when you trying to talk in the parliament about universal income?
Well, first, that people will stop work. I think that's a huge misconception because the pilot projects show that citizens don't stop work. They have more bargaining to have better salaries on their jobs or to move to other jobs because they have that safety nets, and so they can plan to go to other professions, and or give time to themselves to educate themselves. A lot of citizens study more, they have higher degrees, and they use that money to educate themselves or to spend time with the family. We live in a society, I have two kids, that we cannot spend time with our families, and so that's also very important and very relevant if we want to make the social tissue more united. Another misconception is that we don't have money to do this type of projects. Obviously, in a larger scale, this would amount to a huge sum of money. But if we look at the pilot projects, we can assess that this is possible. We could, for example, have more financing from the EU budget through different lines. We could have support from national budgets. We could have from municipalities. We can have local coins that could help this implementation. We can even have the discussion that is the most important discussion, that is what is the net costs and the gross costs. So if I give 500 euros to everyone, it will have like a gross cost. But then if I add the tax that you have, the people that have higher incomes, the more wealthy, would pay that basic income. So that is the net value in the end of this basic income. So when I say, oh, but this is for the rich, and the rich don't need this for anything. Yes, but in the end, they are paying for that because they are paying more taxes. Mm-hmm. And so it's a social program that also takes the stigma of channeling money to the poorest ones. And who would benefit more would be the poorest and the middle class.
Okay, interesting. Before we, I will move on to a different topic, but you mentioned that you made like a small documentary in 12 episodes. Do send me the link in the chat. I will copy it to the audience at the end. That way they can check it out. Then let's move on. So you mentioned that in Portugal initially you were part of Animalist Party, which evolved into a more ecologist Green Party, and in Parliament now you work a lot on animal welfare. So first, why did you decide to work on animal welfare? Why animals specifically? What was what is the thing?
I think also because I'm vegan, and in my perspective, in politics, all is interconnected. So when we are talking about a model, an economic model that exploits animals to a level that they are just objects, we really have to make them into the equation. And when, for example, if we look and we start to debate the impacts of farming, the impact of animal farming, this has also repercussions on our decarbonization. And so if we don't talk about our way of producing animals, even if you or me or someone eats animals, we are missing a huge part of this decarbonization that needs to be talked. And I think also politics is about bringing a progressive view on humanity and how can she evolve to a different type of view of all this that is interconnected. And so if we don't talk about animals, we are missing a huge part. And most of the biomass nowadays is composed by animals that are produced for us to eat. And so we really have to make them into the equation. And then you have the other types of animals that also have to be on the political debate. For example, is it rational for us to be exploiting animals in zoos, in circuses, in bullfighting, for example? And those kind of issues are also very dear to me because in some way we are not debating what stopped in several years ago. So we are hurting a sentient being for our pleasure. And I think this also has a political side. And that was also one of the platforms that brought me here. And I discussed as much as I can, because I think it's really important for us to have an honest debate, not a morally superior, I'm vegan, you are not, I defend this, you defend that, but a very honest debate on the role of animals in politics. And so I think that has to be made. And obviously, if you talk about these issues, you have to be coherent. And in my perspective, I cannot be coherent if I'm not vegan. And so this has all related to my personal choice. And I always state this is a personal choice to not consume or exploit any animals in the process, so I can be coherent with my political views.
So for you, it's more about putting the topic on the table and try to encourage people to move away from animal exploitation in its different form. But it's not about, okay, you have to, where we have to stop eating meat altogether. We have to stop eating fish altogether. It's more okay, on a voluntary basis. It would be better for society to do that.
Because I don't believe in an approach that I would dictate how you live your life, obviously. But I think the debate should be honest and open about what's happening. For example, the European Union is the biggest exporter of live animals in the world. And so we are talking about billions of animals that are exported in terrible conditions. And I was part of the special inquiry committee on animal transport. And well, it's just inhumane what we do to animals. And I think that has to be debated, but then also pushed through legislation. Even in welfare approach, we should increase the level of measures that protect animals, especially farmed animals. And that also considers people that eat animals, obviously. And well, I'm not trying to be dictatorship or push any philosophy to anyone, but we really need to improve animal welfare in our European Union, because that also connected to other things, to pandemics, to microbiotic resistance, to the destruction of forests, to the destruction of water. For example, Portugal drains 70% of its water to agriculture and animal farming, and so this is an ecological problem, and Portugal is very exposed to water scarcity. And so this is not only connected to some type of morality regarding animals. No, this is real life. People don't have water because they are directing to a type of production that is unsustainable. One liter of milk needs 1,000 liters of water. 1 kilogram of cow meat needs 15,000 liters of water. So this is concrete, and that's why I think we should also put this into perspective and legislation.
Yeah, but at the same, I mean, just on the latest thing you said, like 1 kilo of meat requires 15,000 of water. It's not like as if the water was disappearing. Part of it goes back into the cycle, the water cycle, etc. So it's not like completely lost water.
No, it is lost because you produce an animal, and the animal, for example, a cow needs to, from the birth until she goes to the slaughterhouse, it has to drink water. It's correlated to the water that you use on pastures, then it goes to the animals. And so if you sum up all this water until the moment that the steak goes into your plate, is this amount, and it's massive. And so if citizens don't know this, probably they don't do nothing. But if at least they know, well, they can make a more conscious choice, even if they continue to consume. And that has to be also with emissions, if we import cattle or not, if we produce locally. So this is a whole range of issues that I think it's very important to be debated.
And so in terms of legislation, how do you concretely push your agenda on animal welfare, bearing in mind that I think that you're not you have to find compromise, you have to build majority, especially when you're talking about you are in the agriculture committee, which is supposed to defend also farmers. So how do you find compromise on this issue with, I don't want to say the opposing side, but farmers make a livelihood out of livestock?
Yeah, no, it's a very reasonable question. Well, because my political philosophy is to find solutions and not putting anyone in one corner, I always try to find a concrete solution, namely for farmers, for them to transit to different types of sectors that are producing a lot of goods. They are different. For example, when you talk about the milk sector, it would be very interesting to have a financial package that would help these farmers to stop producing this type of product and go into plant-based products, because it's a huge market, it's growing a lot. And so we should help farmers to do that. In the other way, if the farmers want to do this type of production, fine, we live in an open market, but they shouldn't have public incentives to do so. Why? Because this has a huge impact on animal welfare, on water scarcity, on emissions, on land use, and so at least we should be neutral about it. And when we sum the Common Agricultural Policy, that is the biggest package of financing on the European Union, when we sum up the values that are also brought by member states supporting these type of sectors, municipalities also that support this, and then the money that is spent to tackle the problems that these industries have on the environment, on water scarcity, on health, on human health, then we have a huge amount of money that could be used to better sectors, to other sectors. And so my proposal is always to try to find these solutions. We had huge debates regarding plant-based products on the CAP, on the CAP. And that was one of the big issues. The meat industry was really afraid of just accepting the reality that citizens want alternatives.
That was actually my next question. So I don't remember if it was last year or a couple of years ago. You would tell me there was a big debate in Brussels about whether it was possible to call a vegan burger or if calling it a burger was in a way denaturing something that is supposed to be linked to meat. Just like under EU law, it's forbidden. You can't call vegan milk because milk has to be something that comes from the cow. So how did you place yourself in this debate?
No, the debate was quite clear. We even had the big producers of meat products saying that this would be very unstable for the market. Citizens know what is a meat product and what is not a meat product. So if you call it an hamburger or if you call it a sausage, people know it's a sausage. It's composed of what? It's different. We are not saying that this fish can be like fish-like or fish something. And so citizens totally understand, consumers understand. It was a huge study made by BEUC, an organization that represents consumers. And 80% of citizens don't have any issues with that. On the contrary, they want more options. They have, obviously, to state that it's made by this and by that and so on and so forth. And so it was a debate that was not even an issue. But it was struck by the meat industry that receives a lot of money. We are talking about billions of euros to maintain the same system that it was post-Second World War. We understand that post-Second World War we had some scarcity problems, and so this type of industries were supported. But nowadays it's not a problem of scarcity. 1/3 of our food is wasted. So this paradigm of producing more food, more meat, more everything is destroying our planet. And so we really have to address it. And in a way, if we want to produce animal proteins, at least let's us produce in less quantity, in more close by, with the real costs of the products. And so we can have also more options on the table for other products. Because to be honest, when I became vegan, I tasted a lot of products that I even didn't know it existed. So it's not a problem of diversity. It's not a problem of accessibility. It's not a problem of health. On the contrary, but the option must be there. And the money that we channel through European Parliament or national parliaments must be directed to this approach and also to a decarbonized society.
And still on this topic of meat, I was just thinking about it, like, more or less at the same time, I think it's in Singapore where they authorized for the first time to human consumption artificial meat or artificial lab-grown meat. So, what's your take on lab-grown meat? Since it doesn't come from an animal, is it better? Is it?
No, it comes from an animal. They just don't kill in the same proportion. So they take from an animal some samples and then they will produce it in controlled environments. In my perspective, I think we should be careful with this type of products. There should be more investigation, more studies on the health effects, on the possibility of health effects. But in the end, if it's proven that it's healthy, I have no issue with that. We will decrease the quantity of produced animals by a lot. It will help the environment. And if it's safe, why not? We also have, it's cultural, but for example, we have crickets pounder that is now being introduced to several products. If consumers want it, if it's safe, fine by me. I wouldn't take it because it still represents, for me, obviously, animal exploitation. But in the end, we really have to see this type of new foods as if they are safe, if they are helpful to the environment, and well, obviously they can be scrutinized by our agencies, namely our food agency. And if it's okay, well, let's go for it.
I have more of a comment in the chat saying one way of working with farmers/ranchers in regard to meat products is changing from high amounts of low quality to low amounts of high quality. That way they can get more profit for less waste. But I mean, stop me if I'm wrong, but when we look at the global market or the worldwide market, European meat tends to be of higher quality, especially if we compare to Brazilian or American feedlots. The European products tend to be on the higher end of the quality scale. Am I wrong?
That depends on what you consider high quality. If you look at intensive farming all around Europe, I would question if that is high quality, because it's really, really scary what's happening in some farms in Europe. And we are talking about a legislation that it's commonly adopted. And it's the best, obviously, it's one of the best legislation on animal welfare in the world. But even so, it's scary. If you enter some farms, you'd be scared. If you enter some slaughterhouse, probably you'll never eat meat again. And so it's really, really scary. And we are also not talking about fish. When we go to the fishery industry, that's massive. We even don't talk about units of fish. We talk about tons. The amount of resources that we take from the ocean, it's inconceivable. And now we are always trying to push this narrative of growth, and we are pushing this industry to aquaculture. So we are producing more and more and more fish just to feed our daily requisites. And so this is not feasible. We really need to debate this in a larger scale. Obviously, each one is free to eat what they want, but if you have a product in your shelf that doesn't represent a real value, it's difficult. Because if you have a chicken, like a kilogram of chicken that is like €2, it doesn't represent the suffering of the animal, probably the investment that the farmers had to have higher standards of animal welfare, the water that it represents, the secretions that need to be treated, the water that is polluted. And so this is like massive. If we internalize all these costs, then we will have a real market, and you will see that this type of costs would be higher, and probably we wouldn't eat as much. And obviously we are always talking about people that don't have money and probably wouldn't have access to this type of foods, but we should help the citizens to have at least the amounts that they need at fair prices. But we really need to internalize this cost, or else we are building an economy that's not real.
Okay, I will just move on to another topic, a bit linked, because you talked about waste, and I understand you work a bit on circular economy. So, what is the EU doing in the field of circular economy?
Yeah, no, it's not one of my.
Oh, okay. Your assistant told me you're working on circular economy, so sorry, my bad.
It's not one of my fields. So I would just be a politician, a regular politician. If I would be just ramming about the circular economy, it's not my main focus.
Okay, well, never mind. I have plenty of other topics to discuss. Energy, is that something that you're comfortable talking about? It's the big news these days all around Europe. It's a big concern for citizens.
Yeah.
It's been actually concerns for Portugal for quite a while, since Portugal last year, I think, negotiated with the Commission a derogation that would allow it to, let's say, put a price limit on gas that they have to pay to have their energy in Portugal. And since then, last week actually, the Commission has come forward, put the option on the table for the entire EU to set a price cap on gas. So the question is whether it's going to be Russian gas, oil gas, etc. But do you think that the idea of putting a price limit on gas is a step in the right direction?
Well, I think we have to go back a bit. When we are talking about the energy crisis that we have to assess that all the comments and proposals that were made by the Green Group were rejected. So to build a strong European market, to build a strong European Union that would rely on renewable energies and would pump up industry, agriculture, housing with this free energy, creating new jobs, creating better infrastructure, better internal market, and so these were all discarded through the fossil fuel industry that continues to make a huge lobby. Now it's more the nuclear industry that makes a huge lobby for us to continue more or less the same path. And so if we would have this approach and a decentralized approach, what do I mean by this? Is not having like big solar panels on the farm and then distributed to houses. It's more like every house, every town hall, every factory, all the ceilings that you have, all small farms, big farms have their energy, produce their energy, and then decentralized can be distributed. So they consume and the rest is distributed. This is a different approach, even from the approach that is now being taken, that is, okay, we are going to bet on renewables, but it's very centralized projects. And so they build huge hydrogen centrals, solar panel centrals, and then distribute to the network. And so this would also be a democratization of energy. So people would have a less to pay on their bill because they were producing their energy, and the excess could be sold to the energy net. And so I think that is also missing on the debates now, even when we are talking about decarbonization. Then we don't have a real energy market. For example, the Iberian Peninsula is cut out from the European market, and so that's not even rational. We could be helping if we had some pipelines regarding the LNG gas, and we didn't. We could be helping and making the structural development on hydrogen, on green hydrogen, and we are not. And so let's see if we can tackle this in a quick way. Obviously, this is not quick as it should, but we should project this to get like a real energy market. But regarding the tap of price, I think it should be analyzed because the energy sector is having huge amounts of cash flow, so liquidity due to the high prices, and that money it's not being directed to the decarbonization of society, to alleviate the bills of common citizens, to industry, and so this impacts everything: food, housing,
everything, the entire economy.
So it's just the entire economy. And so in the end, I think we should try to analyze, and if we need at like a temporary measure to put a limit, I think it would be interesting, or try to find other means to decrease the energy bills to everyone, or incentivizing even more clean energies, so we don't have this distortion that we are continue to pump to the atmosphere CO2 and methane, also due to gas. And in the end, it enters the economy because, well, we are just financing everything as it is due to a war.
Still, since you spoke about renewable, and we've seen in the past, like, okay, we need to use more renewable, and in Germany in particular, that was not linked directly to renewable, it was linked to the Fukushima catastrophe. They decided to close down their nuclear energy production, and now that they are in the middle of an energy crisis, well, in the end they decide to prolong the use of nuclear energy, and even to relaunch additional coal energy production, because, well, they realize that they can't produce everything with renewable. So according to you, shouldn't we keep like the problem with renewable energy is that it's not constant. You need a backup energy in case you have not enough wind, not enough sun, etc. So do you think that we should completely forbid nuclear, coal, and whatever, or keep them still a bit as backup for when there is not enough renewable?
Well, the thing is that this is not planned. We didn't plan ahead, and if we talk about the Greens are not included, because if you look at the general approach on energy and on geopolitics regarding energy, it's the central biggest parties that ever ruled the nation states and the overall institutions that have that responsibility. They approach this geopolitics of gas and oil, and so now it's like the problem is that the Greens have the fault of something it was not implemented by the grids. So again, if we were to build our energy model as we were stated, we probably wouldn't be on this mess, and we were not dependent on some foreign country that is a dictatorship. And be aware that we are making some deals with other countries that are not very democratic. So we are taking a hand on one side and grabbing another dictator on the other. So let's be aware of that. But in the end, I think it's very relevant, that question. For some countries that would not even be possible, because, for example, in Portugal, we have several droughts. In France, huge droughts that had to partially close some nuclear energies centrals because they don't even have water to cool down the reactors. And so we have ITER that is being built, and it can be a reliable source of fusion energy, but it's just testing. Mm-hmm. So we didn't even build it. It has to be tested. It has to be commercialized if it goes as planned. And so this takes decades. And so nuclear is not really an option. And again, it's a very centralized way of producing energy. Again, it doesn't decentralize. I think we really have to tackle this in two ways. First, the consumption model. We really have to stop and think if we really need this society that consumes all at every time, all the time. It doesn't matter the cost. We are importing tons of crap that we don't really need to fulfill our lives in matters that in the majority, well, it doesn't really make sense. And so this approach of growth at every level, at every sector, it's insane, and it's pushing us to the collapse of our biosphere. And so in that sense, we really have to shift the paradigm. Regarding the constant of energy, you have several types of systems that can back up, and you don't really need the coal plants or the nuclear. But in the case of Germany, well, it was their decision because they were struck by a huge war that raged on the frontiers of the European Union, and they decided, because they have their freedom, to prolong the nuclear reactors. It was unfortunate that they would rely on coal. I would assume that they could try to find other means of getting clean energy, because coal is a huge pollutant, and it really doesn't help the goals that we are set, also national but European, to 2030. And so, but well, I'm not into national German politics.
No, of course. I was taking Germany as an example. I didn't ask you to comment specifically in the detail the German model.
For example, nuclear is now pushed as the green energy, but you have the nuclear power plants that cannot run because they don't have water. And so again, we really have to rethink all our system and try to analyze if we really need this growth paradigm that is consuming a lot of energy on stuff that we really don't need as humanity. And on the other side, where are our investments? We had a taxonomy that also gave incentives not only to nuclear but also to gas. And so couldn't this money be allocated to other types of energy systems or investigation? Probably yes.
I had someone asked me the question on Reddit. Nuclear is, like you mentioned, one of the big debate these days. And some are pushing for it, some are asking for the ban on it, or at least that it's not used anymore. In the Greens, are there ever like any difference of opinion when it comes to the use of nuclear energy, because there are different national perspective, or is that a topic that's on which the group is completely unified and everyone from Portugal to Poland says no, we don't want nuclear at all?
Yeah, I think we are very unified, at least in building new power plants. Obviously, we have some countries that still use nuclear power, and so they are like a tool to decarbonize society. On that sense, we also have that perspective, that each country has their geopolitics and their energy grid. But the construction of new power plants is a thing that we don't really support, and we are all united on that. And so that's commonly a non-issue for us.
Even for the transition, because you mentioned the taxonomy. So in the taxonomy, so it for GN, the taxonomy is a label that is supposed to direct investment toward, let's say, green energy or energy of transition. And inside the taxonomy, there is gas and nuclear. Do you think that even if nuclear in the grand scheme of things is not ecological, it can still be used as a transition energy because it provides, it's reliable, and it can help countries to disconnect from oil production, from coal production, or should we not even consider it?
Well, the power plants that are built, as I said, can be a tool to this process of reducing ourselves. For example, for coal burning, obviously it has less impact because the central is built, it can run for a few years more, and so it can help this energy transition. But in an overall, what's said that new power plants can be built, and that is a very intensive energy industry. To build a nuclear power plant, you have to pour a lot of resources, you have to pour a lot of security. Nowadays, with the war, we see that it can be tackled as a military target. And so also in that perspective, it's not wise for us to be building central nuclear power plants all over the place. It's a military asset, and so it's very scary. We see in Zaporizhia what's happening. Well, that can be like a huge tragedy for all the Europeans if we have a huge nuclear problem there. And then in the end, I think that's the point. So where are we directing public money to our energy system? And also don't forget that we still have to mine some minerals to use on this industry. We have to spend a lot of money on security, cyber security, physical security. And in the end, we are handling some waste that is not being solved on our lifetime, and so we are just pushing this to another generation. Say, okay, we made a mess. We are creating this solution, but we are creating another mess that you will manage in a couple of thousand years ahead. I don't think that's really responsible.
Final topic on the final question on the question of energy, and let's say more climate change in general. One big concern at national level and beyond is the question of social acceptability. The fact that we need to do the green transition, we need to change the way we consume. As you mentioned, you said that we need to consume less, but how do we make it acceptable for people? You know that, so I'm French, you know that in France we had the Yellow Jacket movement, which started as an opposition to taxation on fuel. So how do you think the EU should tackle this question of social acceptability, or do you think it's not a real issue?
No, it is, and it impacts working people and the low and middle class. And so I think as politicians, we really have to think about our policies in the long term. And so if we can do the taxation of some types of energy, but we really have to give a concrete proposal to citizens so they can see a way out. For example, if I just say that I'm going to automate all the industry because this is good for the environment, thousands of jobs, of millions of jobs in transportation will be lost, and Uber and taxis and trucks and so. But this is a path; it will happen. The automatization in this sector will happen, and it will bring about millions of jobs, and millions of citizens will be unemployed. And what we do with the citizens. And so that's why we have to plan ahead of the problem. And that's why we should before have this type of incentives to producing locally and localized energy communities. It's like a huge thing that is not happening. It's like just localized. We can build entire cities on these premises of local communities producing their own energies, and automatizing also some sectors, giving the opportunity for citizens to enter other jobs or to find places to educate themselves. And in this place, it comes the universal basic income. So we cannot only see this sectorally, we have to see this as a paradigm. And also that's why I also promote a lot the universal basic income. That can be a social tool that helps social states to transit to a different type of economic and social paradigm.
And then how do you balance things? Because like you say, to for the interest of social acceptability, you need to plan things ahead. So to not to delay, but smooth, make a smooth transition so that people can transition out of something But at the same time, we have a climate emergency, and so we're already fighting. We're already late in the race. So on the contrary, if we were looking at we're looking at the side of climate change, we need to act. We needed to act yesterday. So how do you balance the fact that we need to act slow for social acceptability, but at the same time we need to take strong measure if we want to fight climate change?
That's interesting, but I think they are both connected. So, for
Yeah,
example,
they
we
are.
talk about taxonomy. That is a clear example. Should we be wasting money on gas and nuclear industry? Shouldn't we getting these incentives and saying to the market also, here is a big lump of money. You should use this to better the transport systems, to be more efficient, to run on less energy, to build more public transportation, better trains, for example. In Portugal, we don't have a connection to Madrid directly. We have to make a huge trip of 8 or 12 hours to get to Madrid. This is a simple thing, a connection between two capitals of the same peninsula. We don't have it. Shouldn't we be investing on this? I think this is the thing, and this is a concrete thing. Shouldn't we be investing on isolating houses to decrease their energy bill? Shouldn't we be building energy communities that can be built in a couple of months and giving them energy to produce themselves? For example, in Portugal, we have 300 days of sun. Shouldn't we be doing this? Yes, we should have been doing this, but we always have like big interests that want to continue more or less the same thing, even though the discussion is always on the citizen and on the pressure that they have. Yes, they have that pressure, but the majority of the politicians, in my perspective, that are on the biggest parties are run by this economic and social model that is the same. We can decarbonize the bit, we can make it greener, but the mindset of these politicians is the same. And this goes, if we talk about energy, talk about agriculture, if you talk about fisheries. Imagine me, a vegan, on the fisheries committee and agriculture committee talking about this issue. People look at me like I'm an alien. And for me, it's cool because, yeah, I'm talking about this issue. I'm putting it on the table. But the mindset of these politicians is always the same. And it's a growth paradigm, and it's always building more and constructing more and not rethinking the paradigm. And that's why I also talk a lot of universal basic income, because that can be a net for citizens to transit to a different type of model and also reject things. The majority of citizens probably have to work on some jobs because they don't have an option. And we don't even have an option as politicians. And so we should build that social network for citizens to reorganize themselves and to empower themselves to make better options and the choices that are better for their life.
Now let's talk a bit about Portugal. So yeah. Portugal was one of the countries that was very badly hit by the economic crisis back in 2008, and since then, so there was a whole recovery plan negotiated with the Commission, etc. Like Greece, like Ireland, like Spain, like a bunch of countries. But like if we compare to Greece, Portugal had a very quick and healthy recovery. Actually, it's one of the countries that recovered the best from the economic crisis. So how do you explain that? What made Portugal recover better than the other country in the EU, despite the fact that you are a relatively small economy compared to France, to Germany, etc., and that you took the brunt of the economic crisis?
Well, we have to see that it was a very hard period for Portuguese. We had huge cuts on pensions, on salaries. It was a very austeric period that is still on the minds of the majority of citizens, even though it was pushed by a socialist government. The social democrats have to manage with this hot potato the crisis, and we had foreign intervention. And in the end, the socialists used that feeling of austerity and really depressing and manifestations on the streets because it was too hard. It was really, really hard. and they went again to the power. And I think we are building up another bubble that may burst in a couple of years, because we have a debt bigger than our GDP. We still are not planning as we should our industry. We are in a very competitive market. Even though we are in a single market, our industry is very sectorial, is very weak in several areas, and so we have a huge dysfunction on our economic tissue.
So you didn't. What you're saying is that despite all the support and the reforms that were made, Portugal still doesn't have the solved, let's say, the underlying problem of its economy, and so it's running in circle. And you're saying that we are going back to a cycle of crisis because it didn't solve its own issues.
I think we didn't solve it yet, and also because we have a huge taxation, especially through indirect payments. So to say, for example, we have huge taxes on the consumption of fuel. That is good, but in the end, it clashes to the middle class and the lowest class, and so this is very hard for the common citizen to accept, and the prices of fuel are very, very high in Portugal, considering our level of income. And also our productivity is high, but it's not high enough on the sectors that should be having. We have a lot of textiles in the north, a very agricultural sector also, and we should be building other type of technology and industries, so we don't import several types of materials and products. Also in the energy sector, we are building up. Yeah, we have a huge sector that is building up on renewables, but we could do more, and we could be, again, trying to project our society to a more independent, locally, regional on energy. For example, we should be building a lot at energy communities, giving the responsibility to the town halls and the cities to be decarbonizing faster, helping everyone have a solar panel, building up this industry that is also very important. So we are importing panels from China. We should be trying to incentivize with our universities the research and development of this type of products, so we can also be a market globally. And so I think in that level we are not ready yet, and we made several mistakes. We privatized our national company, aviation company, but now we nationalized, and now we are privatizing it again. So we don't have like a common pact, and sometimes this is good for us to stop and have a common pact on the biggest issues and the biggest sectors, and say, okay, as a country, okay, you are from the left, I'm from the right, but let's try to at least project our country in the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. For example, that line from Lisbon to Madrid, it was an issue that was waterboarded, so to say, and it disappeared, and it's very relevant. And now we are talking about building a new airport in Lisbon, and so this is counter-cycle.
So as a Portuguese, you have, for linguistic and historical reasons, particular links with Brazil in Southern America. There are elections going on in Brazil to designate the new president. There is there is a trade agreement between the EU and Mercosur that is, let's say, in the fridge for the time being because of the problem with the Brazilian president. Two questions. First, in the EU, there is a hope that if Lula was to win the election, that could unblock things reset a bit the relationship between Brazil and the EU. So, first, do you agree with that? With that idea?
No, because I would have to see the technical details of that unfrozenness. Because, as we know, the devil is on the details, and it's just not rational for us to be saying that if you elect obviously we are talking about two different candidates, if we are only talking about these two, Bolsonaro and Lula, and one is from the Democratic side, although it was the party from the Workers' Party, the PT, had huge problems with corruption, with mismanagement of money, but we are still talking about the Democratic Party with the Democratic leader, and on the side, obviously it was elected democratically, but we see a very autocratic leader, a very non-science-based approach to politics, also connected to corruption with his children, and so it's different. But if we look at both candidates, they represent the same economic model. They disindustrialized a lot Brazil. They don't have policies that tax the richer to give it to the middle class and the poorer. They finance it, and this is clear because Lula ran for 4 presidencies the country, so we have a record. He transferred more money to the banking sector and the fiscal sector and the big owners of wealth in the country than for the poor. Obviously, he had some policy that were good, like a basic income for the poorest ones, but this was like a slice of the pie that was really short, and the biggest chunk was to the bigger sectors, so the banking system and the financial system. And obviously, I would be very reticent to say that just because Lula is in power, we will stop the deforestation in Amazonia, because also in the program that he introduced to the Supreme Court, he removed the regulation of agro farming and animal farming. That is the biggest driver of deforestation in Amazonia. He has several issues that he didn't state where the money comes from, so it's just political statements in the program. So that's also very, very hard for me to accept. But that's why I'm also supporting more the third candidate that is on the polls, that is Ciro Gomes, that has a real project with numbers that says where they are going to tax, where they are directing these taxes to, how they are going to support a basic income that is constitutional. So it's on the constitution and it's not being played around by the left party or the right party before the elections. That is very cruel, say the citizens that really need this support, trying to say, no, if you vote on this one, you'll have less. If you vote on me, I'll give you more. So it's a constitutional basis, and it's equal to whichever president it goes to Brazil. And also talks about Amazonia, how should we protect the indigenous communities. He has a real mindset of changing even the political debate. We see now the debates on Brazil, they only attack each other, they don't talk about policies. And that could be interesting. Okay, let's talk about policies. You defend this, you defend that. The money comes from here, you spend it there. But the narrative, it helps also the Lula saying that, okay, I'm the only democratic candidate, and if you are supportive of that one, you are not democratic. And so this is very narrowed, and I think we should go to the policies, to the programs, to the funding, and not only talking about these narratives that put people on one side and on the other side. Obviously, there's repercussions, but let's talk about the programs. Let's talk about the money, where it goes from.
And speaking of the problem, like last question on Brazil before we move on, what problems should need to be solved for the EU and Brazil to, let's say, normalize their relationship and, let's say, have something that is I don't want to say sane, but positive as a relationship?
Let me also be clear, Bolsonaro is the worst type of candidate or presidency that you could have in a country.
Regardless of the leader, like the what are the underlying problem Brazil altogether, what are the problems that need to be solved for the EU to have a good relationship?
The presidency should have, obviously the Brazilians elect who they want. And I'm not meddling in internal elections, but as an MEP, I would like to see the presidencies of Brazil be based on science, be based on diplomacy, be based on the common mutual benefit. That I think we shouldn't have like a colonial look at Brazil. On the contrary, Brazil could supplant Europe if they wanted. They have a huge potential. And I would like to sit side by side with Brazil and talk about the problems that we have on this Mercosur deal and with the Mercosur countries and the deal with the European Union, and talk about how we can concretely surpass them, protect the Amazon forests, guaranteeing that you have trackability of the products, that you also can regenerate Amazonia. We cannot only talk about stopping the deforestation, we have to reforest those areas. how can we mutually benefit from the same a treaty that has legal bindings, that we can clearly have legal standards to both sides if we want to dispute some areas, and so like a clean, organized, diplomatic, science-based agreement that would be perfect.
I'm looking at the time, so I will go into like let's say my final set of questions. So tomorrow is the state of the union, so the big political speech of the year. So what do you expect, and what would you like to hear in tomorrow's speech from Ursula von der Leyen?
Well, I would like to hear the overall approach of the crisis that we have, that is the war in Ukraine, how we can support Ukraine and their efforts to stay sovereign, but also to tackle the problems that we Europeans are having due to that crisis, food crisis, the price crisis, but always connected to environments, because they are not disconnected. And so if we just hear like a more popular speech saying that we will decrease the consumption of the bills of citizens, we will have more money for this and that, but we don't really understand that this is connected to the climate crisis that is draining our water. We have droughts all over the place. We have huge problems of energy also deriving from the impacts of climate crisis. The food prices are also getting very high. Next year will be very dramatic because the production of food decreased a lot this year due to water scarcity. If we don't really connect this crisis to the big overall crisis that is the climate crisis, I think we'll just be having like a popular debate and some political sound bites that in the end don't reflect the real necessity that we have, that is to make the transition, the real transition to a decarbonized society that impacts in a good way the citizens and their daily life.
If you could change anything about the EU, like you snap your fingers, something changed, what would you change about the EU and why?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I would say that's a common agricultural policy because it's the biggest package that we have on the European budget. It impacts all the things that we do daily, the water, the soil, biodiversity, the food prices, animal welfare, the amount of food that is wasted, the waste that derives from this sector, and it would be a real interesting way for us to shift the biggest chunk of money that is used on the European Union to a very positive approach. So we would have better forest, bigger forest, better production, more localized, better food, more money wouldn't be wasted, and so it could be directed to other types of policies. And so I think that would be very interesting because in the end, it's also the least sexiest theme that we could talk about. And so if I could have like a different approach, it would be like on the common agriculture policy.
And a final question, the traditional one on the channel, where do you stand on the debates on a federal European Union? Are you in favor? Are you against? Are you on the fence?
Well, I would be more pro federal union, but I would have to understand how it was being made. So in the end, it's all about the details, but I think we have a long way to go there because we have the nationalists rising, the populist movements also on the verge of winning, or at least having more expression on national parliaments. And I think this debate has to be made, but with calm, with ponderation, and with more citizens. So we really need to tackle more the gap between the European institutions, the European politicians, and the citizens. Because in the end, if we don't build a union, regardless of their structure, that doesn't correlate with the wishes of the citizens, we will be making a failed project.
Well, that's very clear. Thank you very much, Francisco Guerreiro, for taking the time to answer our questions tonight. Chat, make sure to thank him, to wish him again a happy birthday if you hadn't already. You can check him out on Twitter. You have his link below the video feed. What I will do is I will share the link to the Yeah, okay. I'm just clicking the documentary that you up. There you go. So if you want to check out the documentary on universal income, you can click it. It's in the chat. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Guerreiro. I hope you enjoyed the interview.
Just call me Francisco. Don't call me Mr.
Sorry, a force of habit. It's a force of habit. But yeah, thank you very much. Hopefully, we'll see you here in the future at some point. And I wish you a very good evening and see you soon.
Thank you very much. And thanks to your project. It's really cool. It's really funny. Continue with your intellectual challenges with the memes. And thank you very much for your approach and the interview.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
All right. Guys, there is an ad going on right now. Unfortunately, I can't stop it. So I will have to wait let's say a minute, which is perfect because it will give me the time to do my transition because I can't have the camera and on Zoom and the camera here at the same time, so that's perfect. Let me just do the thing. Does it work? Yay, I'm on screen. So just 2.5 pages for you today. Oh, well, that's already 2.5 pages, and I will catch you up on the rest. We're just gonna wait 1 minute because there's still the ad going on. So sorry about that. So if you missed the first stream I did, now I have longer ads on the channel. Not because I want the money. I'm not getting any money from there. It's just that when I run ads at the beginning of the stream, it postponed the next ad from an hour and a half. That means that those of you had done perfect. Those of you who joined during the interview, so the last hour, you didn't have any ad when connecting. While if I didn't have the ad at the beginning, you would join the interview, and then you would get suddenly a minute of an ad. So I try to put it at the beginning and at the end of the interview. That way, in between during the core of the interview, you don't have to deal with ads. But yeah. Anyway, let's do our little debriefing of the interview. So it was interesting because actually we discussed about topics I had no plan of discussing about, like universal income. I had no idea he was working on that, but that was making for an interesting discussion. I thought that he was working on circular economy. He wasn't working on circular economy, but yeah, that was a still interesting conversation. So let's start with universal income. What is universal income? Like the name implies, it means that instead of you getting a job and getting a salary as a result of that job, in addition to that, or instead of that, in any case, everyone, like any citizen, would get an amount of money from the state, the amount of which to be determined and to spend on whatever. So you get money whether you work, whether you don't work. Doesn't matter. You get money automatically from the state. That's the principle of the universal income. And so there has been a debate for a few years now, quite a few years now, about this because, as he explained during the interview, it is seen as something that is potentially helping for starters people who don't have a job, but also it could help in the transition, let's say the ecological transition. Why? Because he mentioned at some point automatization. So you have robotization of the industry, of the transport sector, etc. So that means that you will have people losing their jobs. And so he was explaining, the universal income would be a way to help these people do the transition, because they would, even if they would lose the job, they would still get some money, and this money they could use it for starters to live, and then also to teach themselves new skills, and then transition to another job from which they could live. So there's a whole debate about automatization, the green transition, and how a potential universal income could help. So this is a global debate. It's not linked to the EU. Like he mentioned himself, it's not in the EU competence. So even if the EU wanted to do it, it doesn't have the right to do so. It can only be done at national level. He said that there's a few experiments here and there. There was an extensive one in Finland, he was saying, but that was interrupted because the government didn't like the way the scheme was done. Even Mr. Guerreiro was a bit critical also on the size of the sample. It was targeting only unemployed people, not people with a job. So it was not providing as extensive data as he would have liked, but still, that's part of a debate. And instead, yeah, what my objective is to try to get a pilot project on that. So, what is a pilot project? MEPs have, and the parliament in general, they have the power, of course, to change the law. That's why they are co-legislators. So when the commission really is making a proposal for a directive or a regulation, the parliament is there and change the law, etc. Negotiate with the council, and at the end, you get a nice and fancy new EU law. But MEPs also have the ability to launch so-called pilot projects. Pilot project it's a part of the EU budget that is dedicated to try things out, basically. So you have MEPs who will submit to the budget committee and then to the negotiations with council. Say, okay, there is this project that is interesting. For instance, on universal income, assuming that it would be possible under the treaties, because you can only do pilot project on things that are within the treaties, etc., etc. Assuming that universal income was compatible with treaties, you could have one MEP who say, okay, I want to test out this idea, this concept, and so to the universal income. And so to try this out, I will give a budget. I will say, okay, I will have 300,000 euro. I'm throwing a figure. I have no clue how much it would actually cost. Probably much more than that. So I have 300,000 euro, and for 3 years, we will try with this money to do the universal income. So we will take a small population, like let's say a village, and we will give to the population of that village a universal income, and we will see how people react, whether it's successful or not. And so at the end of the 2 or 3 years of the pilot project, we will assess the situation, and then it can give a way it can be the occasion for the commission and also for MEPs to say, okay, this pilot project worked out, maybe where it shows that it's a good idea, and we should go further than that and make it an actual EU law. So usually pilot projects, and it's complicated to get a pilot project through because everyone wants to test ID. Every lobby under the sun wants to push pilot projects because it's a way for them to push their ideas and to use it as a lobbying tool. Because of course, if you have a pilot project, you force the topic on the table for later on. And so yeah, you have this tool that is used to try things out, to see whether an idea is worth pursuing or not. So that's one of the tools that MEPs have. It's like I'm using the universal income, but it can be like trying something, financing a project. It can be, okay, I'm asking the commission to do a study on that particular topic, which will then be used later on for potential legislative work, etc., etc. What is it we talked about? We talked at length about animal welfare, the fact that it's something that, so he's a vegan, and he's explaining that how the exploitation of animal is something that has an impact in many different ways of society, whether it's climate change or environmental policy as in general. So he quoted the number that to produce 1 kilogram of beef meat, you need 15,000 liters of water. So there's a debate around this figure on whether it's a really honest figure, because it includes like the water that, of course, the beef is drinking, but part of the 15,000 will return to the water cycle in any case. So there are debates around this 15,000 liters of water figure, but still there is let's say livestock is a water intensive sector. That's for sure. And so he's saying, yeah, if we produce less, if you have less livestock, have less animal that we breed to eat, then it will have as a consequence less of would it be weird to say it's bad that cows drink? No, I don't think it's bad to say that cows drink. I would say his point is it's bad that there is so many cows to feed, to exploit, etc. It's more its point. That's saying that it's bad that cows how dare they drink? How dare you cow to drink? But yeah, it's part of the big thing. He talked about zoos, circus, or also the impact of on society. This kind of thing. But he said, I'm a vegan, but I don't want to force people to become vegan. It's still a choice, and then people just about putting the topic on the table, giving people the data, and then people decide for themselves. Okay, do I want to eat meat? Do I want to become vegan? That's up to people to decide. But he said, also it's a matter of public support. Like he was not happy with the common agriculture policy, so the CAP, as we call it in Brussels. So what is the CAP? The CAP is one of the biggest and the first EU policy. So the common agriculture policy was created back in the 50s. It's already in the Treaty of Rome, so in 57. And it was created as a way, the EU finance the agricultural sector, because back then we were out of World War II, and there were big problems of food security. The EU was not able to, Europeans were not able to feed themselves. There was not enough food for all Europeans, so we had to import, etc. And so the CAP was created to produce more, so that to help Europeans feed themselves. That's the origin of the CAP. And then as time passed on, it was a very successful policy. It was a very big policy, because it's still the case, but it was back then, it was by far the biggest bit of the budget in the EU. Like it was like at some point like 60% of the budget was going into the agricultural policy. I think now it's more like 40 or 30%, I think. I'm not sure, but it's still a big chunk. It's still the biggest part of the EU budget, but it's not as big as it used to be in proportion of the EU budget. And now there is a transition that was made. First, we managed after a few decades to feed ourselves. So the EU is producing more food than it needs to feed itself. Great, and so it became then a matter of economic power. So how it became a product of export. So it was one way for European countries to get rich. I don't want to say to get rich, but to support their economy, because they were exporting a lot of food. Like France is a huge food exporter. Italy is a big food exporter. Spain is a big food exporter, etc., etc. So it became like let's say an economic policy for economic interest. Even if there's also a matter of food security. And also to an extent social cohesion, because there's also a social aspect to the CAP. You want to help farmers have decent wages to be able to live of their work, to maintain also the rurality, this kind of thing. And now we're going through another transformation of the CAP, which is how to make the CAP greener, how to make it less intensive, because for a long time a good CAP was a CAP that was producing more. So you wanted farmers to have bigger exploitation because they was making more food. It was more interesting it was more scalable economically. And so it was, how do we produce more with bigger and bigger exploitation? Now we're trying to have a more green kind of CAP, which is how do we encourage farmers to produce in a greener way, in a more sustainable way. So that means maybe lowering a bit the size of the exploitation, give more money to producers, to farmers that do bio, that are less polluting, this kind of thing. But it's a complicated debate, of course, a very complicated and intense debate, and because again we're talking about the livelihood of people, and the farming sector for many farmers, they live out of the EU money. I mean, they if they didn't have the EU money, they would just get bankrupt. They would not be able to maintain their exploitation, so they would close down. So you have to balance things out, and there is a big fight around the cap because of the green transition. Because of course agriculture is also a big carbon emitter, this kind of thing. But it's definitely not one of the easiest topics. What else do I have on the cap? Okay, that's all I had. We talked a bit about artificial meat because I saw so that there is a new development, and in Singapore they authorized human consumption. So in Singapore, in theory, you could buy artificial meat, so meat that is lab grown, so it doesn't come from a cow that you will have killed and carved up. It will be like you will have taken samples from a cow, and then from there in a lab you grow the meat, you grow muscle, and so you make an artificial steak, you make an artificial meat in a lab. And so Singapore has authorized, I think it's the only country in the world that has done that, to authorize the human consumption of it. Is lab meat illegal in the EU? I would guess so, because you wouldn't. It doesn't have like any kind of. For starters, it would need to be authorized for human consumption by the European safety authorities and then national authorities as well. But at the moment, I don't think lab meat is legal to consumption. You can't buy lab grown meat. I think it's something you can experiment on. You, of course, can do research, etc., but you can't sell it. You can't sell it to a supermarket and say, okay, I'm gonna sell lab grown meat. And just like you could not import lab grown meat to sell to people, it's not authorized. But it would not be authorized under EU law and under national law. And that's what Mr. K was saying. So yeah, okay, sure, it's a development that allows to kill maybe less animals, because you don't have to kill systematically cows to make a steak. You just need samples from less. And but you need to look at the safety. You need to look at, okay, is it safe actually to eat a lab-grown meat? Because and there's also a nutritional aspect, because when you buy a steak, it's not only muscle, it's also there's a bunch of elements. It's not pure muscle. I say actually, if you were eating pure muscle, it would not be it would not necessarily be good for your health. So the fact that the lab-grown meat is in a way pure muscle, it's not exactly the same thing as a steak that you would buy in the supermarket. So there are questions whether it's safe or not, etc. Because it's still artificial meat, so we don't know exactly what it does. So there is a lot of research to be done on whether it's safe for humans to eat. And so he said, yeah, if EFSA, so EFSA is the European Food Safety Authority, says that it's fine, then why not? But even if he said, yeah, I'm vegan, I would not eat lab-grown meat, because it's still ultimately coming from an animal in one way, because it comes from samples taken from animals. But still, that's something that is one of the debates. And linked to that, there was I discussed that during the interview. I don't remember if it was last year or a couple of years ago. There was a whole debate, a big debate in Brussels about burgers. Should it be allowed to call a vegan burger a burger, or should only burgers made out of meat called burger? And so it would be up to vegan products to call themselves something else, whatever, like vegan patties or whatever, but they could not call themselves burger. And there's a precedent to that, which is milk. You can check in your supermarket, it's forbidden to call milk something that is not milk coming from a cow. So that's why you have soy milk, almond milk, etc. It's always soy. It's not milk by itself. It's milk like soy milk, etc. But they can't call themselves milk per se. They have to say, we're soy milk, we're almond milk, etc. So it's forbidden. And so there's this debate. There was this debate on whether you could call a vegan burger a burger or not. There was like at some point like the farmers lobby in Brussels that I'd even put like a advertising in the metro, which was a parody of the Matisse painting Ceci n'est pas une pipe. And so they put a burger and say Ceci n'est pas un burger. As part of this debate, and there is basically, let's say, a bit more of a philosophical debate on what do we call things. If we can call anything because it looks like something else, then it creates let's say confusion with the consumer, etc., etc. So that's part of one of these big debates that was everywhere. I mean, I would say it was a bit ridiculous as a debate, but well, still, it was one of the big debates that 2 years ago, and I don't think the amendment passed in the end. I don't recall exactly. Anyway, what else do I have on my? Oh yeah, he said at some point, if you could go into a slaughterhouse, you would be disgusted. You would never eat meat ever. I have a fun story about that. So back when I was in Parliament, it was like I think 2019. So before I left, once there was so in the Parliament you have all the time events, but also exposition. So you have an MEP or a lobby supported by an MEP who has an exposition in the Parliament. So they have specific space where they can show up stuff. They can show stuff. It can be an artistic exposition. So you have paintings, you have music, you have whatever. It can be more ad hoc events. So for one day you will have an exposition or something, whether like on defective products or counterfeit products. And so one day there was an exposition on slaughterhouses. It was done by a green NGO. I don't remember the name of the NGO. And so their pitch and the concept was great. I have to say was be in the skin of a pig going to the slaughter. And so the whole thing was you're doing a VR experience where you are supposed to be in the shoes of a pig, of a cow that is going to the slaughterhouse. I thought the concept was great. Like with my colleague, when we saw the invite, we saw, oh shit, we have to go there, and so we went. We were a bit disappointed because when we went there, we were literally imagining that we put it's a VR thing, so they put on you the headset, the glasses, the VR glasses, and all that. And so I was really expecting that it would be a point of view of the pig, and so you would be in a slaughterhouse, and you had the guy basically cutting your throat because you're the pig being in the slaughterhouse. Big deception, big disappointment on my part. Even if it's a bit morbid, but I found the concept hilarious. I was a bit disappointed because actually it was a VR experience, but you're not in the shoes of the pig or the cows that was being slaughtered. When I thought about it back then, it was logical it would not be this, because how would they even do this? Film it, but anyway, it was more like you're in a VR experience. You are in a slaughterhouse, so you look around and you see the chain of animals when they're then being slaughtered. So you would see cows, you would see pigs being killed. They would stun them, cut their throats, and that would be it. And so it was meant to show you what is the reality of a slaughterhouse, etc., etc. It's a bit disappointing because I mean, you look around, yeah, you see. I mean, it's never a fun thing to see animals being killed. That's for sure. But well, there was nothing like a super gross. I mean, I don't in the ones that I saw, because they were doing one with pigs, one with chicken, one with cows. I saw the one with cows, I think. But anyway, it was not like something gross or whatever. And yeah, you see animals getting killed, but well, that's the gist of it. And so after that, I was discussing with there's a person of the NGO who then talks with you, say, okay, what do you think about it? And I had an interesting debate with her. I said, yeah, but I mean, is the thing that you show me like legal? Is it like a slaughterhouse that respects the regulation in terms of animal welfare, in terms of safety, etc., etc.? And she was like, yeah, it's something that is done by the book. There is nothing illegal in what we showed you, but still, it's not. It's a bit shocking that the poor animal is getting killed, etc. You can see in one of the scenes that so they are hanged by the feet. You can see at some point that he it falls on the ground, so it's a big roast, etc. So yeah, but at some point, yeah, we eat meat. That's how it is. And as long as there's nothing illegal in this, so it's not breaking the rules or anything. Yeah, okay, it's more okay. Do you want to be vegetarian or do you not want to be vegetarian? That's the kind of thing. But there's not like a rule breaking thing. It's not saying, oh, you see, this is a big factory that is supposed to be reputable, but actually they're breaking the rules. It's terrible. The animals are being tortured, etc. So in which case you say, yeah, that's fucked up. They need to respect the regulation. But yeah. All that to say that yeah, when he talked about the slaughterhouses, it reminded me of this VR experience when I got to see a slaughterhouse in VR and was a bit disappointed. But I remember I had a pretty interesting discussion with the NGO lady afterwards. It was like on whether we should eat meat or not, whether it should be mandatory, blah blah blah. But yeah, all that to say, you can do VR in the slaughterhouse. What else do I have? We talked at length about the energy crisis. That's the big thing. To be honest, at some point I have taken the it's bad to eat meat, but I still do it position. I mean, you need meat for nutritional reasons. I mean, the human are omnivores, and they eat vegetables, they eat meat. That's part of as a species, what we do. If you don't eat meat, especially when you're a kid, you can have deficiency. You're supposed to take other things. It can bring problems. But I mean, I see the point of reducing the meat consumption, for sure. But giving up completely meat, it has to be a personal choice. You can't make it mandatory for people to stop eating it. I mean, I was actually discussing about this summer with a friend, and I was looking at my old diet, and I realized like I eat very little meat these days. I don't know about you. Like when I was a kid, I was eating quite a bit of meat as a parent would cook. I would go to the canteen at school, and we would fairly regularly meat. But now I don't eat meat that often. I think that I must eat meat like once a week at best, maybe twice, depending if I go out or not. But like for the most part, I don't eat that much meat. So let me know if you eat a lot of meat, because it's interesting whether there is it's just me that for some reason I'm not eating meat anymore, or not a lot of meat, and not because I decide to be vegetarian or vegan. It's just as it happens, I'm not eating meat. I don't have the need to eat meat. But yeah, it's or whether it comes from let's say a societal trend that people tend to eat less meat, whether because they don't want to, for climate reasons, question of cost that sometimes is also there. So let me know if you eat a lot of meat. It's always interesting to know. So yeah, going back to my thing. Energy crisis, big debate. It's going to be one of the key topics tomorrow for the State of the Union. We have price hike because of the price of gas, because of mainly the price of gas that is pushing up all the prices of electricity. People are struggling to pay their bills, and so member states and the parliament are pushing very hard for the commission to act on this. And so last week, actually, the commission already put on the table a few proposals to start tackling the energy crisis. So in terms of measure, we're talking about, let me try to explain that in a simple manner. You set a price for the energy, and you say, okay, above 300 euros per megawatt hour, all the money that an energy producer earns above 200 euro has to be given back to the consumer to help them pay for their bills. It's a way to say, okay, because of the price of gas, and since the price of energy is indexed on gas because it's the most expensive energy, producers of renewable energies or nuclear have production costs that are very low, but they make a ton of profit because they are paid at the price of gas. And so the idea is to say, okay, to help people pay out above a certain price, you have to give the extra money to to consumers so that they can pay their bills. Likewise, the Commission is proposing that there should be specific taxation on energy producers so that also again it fills the coffer of the state and the state can help help the consumers to pay the bills, etc. Support citizens. Another thing that is debated big time is whether to put a price cap on gas, so on Russian gas. So right now, like in Germany, the average price of gas is 400 to 500 euro per megawatt hour. That's the price of gas. The idea is to say, okay, to the Russians, because we still import some Russian gas, even if far less than we used to. And the Commission said that since the beginning of the year, we went from 40% of dependency to Russian gas to 9%. So that means that today, only 9% of the gas that we consume, of the energy that we use, come from Russian gas. And so the idea is to say, okay, instead of paying 500 euro, we will tell to the Russians, well, actually, I'm going to pay 300 euros and either you take it or screw you, and we don't buy your electricity. And so there is a debate among member states on whether this would not push Putin over the edge, that as a retaliation, he would completely stop giving the Europeans gas, which arguably is already doing when he does a maintenance break every 2 weeks. There is a concern also about about the gas that comes from other countries. So there are debates on whether to put a price cap on gas and whether it should be only Russian gas, whether it should be all gas imported with different with flexibility, so that it's still interesting for all the producers to export gas towards Europe, this kind of thing. I'm trying to think. There's another option that I forgot. No, I forgot the rest. But one of the debates that is not put by the Commission on the table, but that is being discussed and pushed by a number of member states, is the idea to decouple gas price from electricity. So as to protect the electricity market from the huge price of gas. And so then it doesn't matter if gas is at 500 euros, because then the rest of the energy sources would be at much cheaper prices because they would be decoupled from gas. Because today, the price of energy in Europe is indexed on the most expensive energy. So to take another example that someone in the chat you said in last week, I think. Imagine that you're with a group of friends and you're thirsty. You go to the bar. You're 5 friends, you're thirsty, you go to a bar. 2 of you order tap water. 2 of you order Coke, and the final one orders a beer. The bartender comes to you and say, well, the beer is the most expensive thing that you took, but since the beer was the last item that you took and the most expensive item you took to quench your thirst, well, all of you will pay the price of the beer, even if you only took tap water, even if you took only a Coke. The energy price in Europe is the same. Is the price of the most expensive energy source that you used, that will be the price for all the energy that you use. So given that there is an explosion of price on gas, energy that you get from renewable, from nuclear, from petrol, from coal, and it's all set at the price of gas. And so the idea there, pushed by some countries, is to detach gas from the rest, so that it doesn't threaten the other energy prices, and so it lowers the overall price. Especially when you have quite a few countries that do not rely a lot on gas, and so there is no reason for them to pay a lot. What else do I have? Taxonomy, we talked about it a lot. So that's a form of European label that is a way to say by the EU to direct investment towards green energy or transition energy. So it's a way to say to investors, okay, put your money in renewable, put your money in nuclear, put your money in gas, ironically, to contribute and to help the green transition. It's a big debate on whether the nuclear and gas should have been included because they are not renewable energies, etc., etc. But well, that's what the Commission did, notably to try to bridge the differences between the French and the who use a lot of nuclear and the Germans who use a lot of gas. What else? We talked quite a bit about nuclear energy. So he said that the Greens are overall united on the fact that they don't like nuclear energy. Even if he said, yeah, as a transition, you could use the ones that are already built. You just should not build more nuclear power plants, etc., etc. We talked briefly about Brazil. So Brazil Brazil does not have a trade deal with the EU. The EU has negotiated a trade deal with Mercosur. Mercosur is a regional organization. It's like think about it like the EU, but for Southern America. So a group of countries in Southern America, they have created Mercosur, which is a form of single markets in Southern America. And so the EU negotiated a trade deal with Mercosur to facilitate and increase the trade between the two areas. But at the not at the last moment, but in the end, this deal was put in the freezer, so there is nothing happening right now. Why? Because because of tensions between let's say Bolsonaro, the Brazilian president, and the EU, and particularly Macron, over the fact that he's not the most democratic leader in the world, the fact that he's not doing much to fight against climate change and deforestation, etc. So famously, Macron said that he was not supporting anymore Mercosur because Bolsonaro broke his promise to fight deforestation, etc. So basically, the thing is in the freezer as long as Bolsonaro is in power, and so since there is a presidential election in Brazil these days, the question is if Lula was to win. So Lula, the socialist candidate, was to win. Socialist, is not socialist, but the left candidate was to win. Would it be enough to restart the Mercosur trade deal and maybe like renegotiate some bits, etc.? Because Lula also wants to renegotiate some things because as it happens, Brazil is a big meat producer as well, so he wants access to European markets. The European farmers do not want the Brazilians to invade the market because the meat produced there is cheaper to produce, etc., etc. So yeah, there is a whole question about whether how will the Brazilian election impact the Mercosur? Will it be revived or not? And the final point, because I see that I've been talking quite a lot. Lula is candidate of a coalition of socialists, South Dem, Third-Way Greens, and communists. Okay, I didn't know he was a coalition candidate. Okay, well, thanks for the info. We'll talk. And final topic, State of the Union. So State of the Union is tomorrow at 8. Oh, I see that it stopped. Oh no, okay, it's back. So the big political debate of the EU every September. It will be tomorrow morning at 9. So you have yourself von der Leyen, President of the Commission, who will come to the European Parliament to explain, okay, what has been happening over the past year and what are my priorities for next year. So that's the moment where she explained what will be the big initiative that the Commission will take for the year to come. So you usually have a big announcement of legislation. Legislation is being, for now, there's a few legislation that are ready to be released, but they are waiting after the State of the Union to actually release it. Like for instance, a regulation, a directive on ban of product produced from forced labor. There is something on the Media Freedom Act. This kind of thing. So I would say it's the big political moment of the EU. That's the big speech where you talk about everything. And it's especially important because, of course, there's the war in Ukraine. So it's pretty much a game changer for the year on many different aspects. There's a before and an after, but also because we are past the alpha mandate, because the von der Leyen has been president since 2019, and a mandate expire in 2024. And since the elections, the next European election are beginning of 2024, 2023 is basically the last useful year of the Commission. It's the last moment where they can make concrete big proposal, legislative proposal, because they still have hope that before the end of the mandate, they could have the law adopted in the Parliament, in Council, etc. So that's let's say 2023 will be the last big push before the election. When there will be the State of the Union in 2023, so in 1 year, she won't make big announcement. It would more or less be, okay, I will take stock on what I did over the past 4 years, and look, I did a good job. I did my best. There's still a few things, but there won't be any big initiative. It will be more about, let's finish up as many of the things ongoing as possible. Let's not add up to it, because then you have the European election, then you have to restart the whole thing. So that means that for von der Leyen and for the Commission is the last moment, the last shot to push initiative and to maybe be able to get them finished before the European election. And so for von der Leyen to put that as a win in her final speech. So that's especially important. And yeah, that's what I add. Tomorrow, let me do the quick conclusion. Unless you have questions. If you have questions, do go ahead. I know that I didn't cover some of the questions of Explains. I don't know if it's not he left Explains, but I didn't cover some of his questions because we were already talking quite a bit about nuclear, and time was running out, so I need to move on. But if you have other questions, now is the time. In the meantime, let's do the conclusion. So tomorrow, State of the Union. It's at 9 o'clock. You can follow it on the website of the Parliament. I can't stream because I work, so I can't follow it live. However, I can encourage you to take your bingo card. Let me just change. How can I do that? Oh yes, I will show you the bingo card I did for the. Where is it? Twitch question. Give me a sec. I'm victim of sabotage. That's not the thing I want to show you. What the hell is that? I can't show what I want. Okay. For some reason I can't show you the. Okay. This. 9 in the morning. Yes. 9 in the morning is the SOTU. So to entertain you while you watch the SOTU at 9 in the morning, I did this traditional bingo card. So it's a big thing in the bubble. You always do a bingo card before for the SOTU, like whether serious or as a meme. I did it as a meme, of course, you know me. But yeah, you can find the bingo card on my Twitter account or on Discord. Actually, I'll post it. It's a wee bit of fun up. But yeah, beyond that, beyond the joke of the bingo card, even if I can't cover the speech live, I will do a debrief of the SOTU in the evening and a debate. So at 8:15 tomorrow, I organize a debate between one EPP, German MEP, Hildegard Bentele, and a green pirate MEP, Marketa Gregorova, to discuss about the SOTU, whether the announcement that were made, etc., etc. So that's going to be tomorrow at 8:15. The debate will last 45 minutes, more or less. And then I will we will stay on. I will stay online and we'll debrief, actually discuss together the State of the Union, the announcement that were made, etc., etc. So it's going to be tomorrow at 8:15. So make sure to be there because it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And that's it. So on this note, I hope that you enjoyed the interview. As usual, if you like what you saw, you can follow me here or you can follow me on my other social media. Here you have the link in the chat. So Twitter, Discord, YouTube, Facebook, all the good things. You just have to click. You have everything. If you especially like what you saw, you can subscribe. You can toss a coin to your streamer via coffee. It's always appreciated if you do. But of course, it's as you want or can. And well, on this note, I wish you all a good evening, and I hope to see you tomorrow for the SO2 debate at 8:15. Have a good one, guys. See you tomorrow. Ciao.